Hi, my name is Julian Lovelock. I'm Senior Director of Product Marketing here at Active Identity, and I'd like to talk to you today about our solutions for identity assurance for the enterprise. Let me begin by summarizing this presentation. Today, strong authentication is mainly deployed to secure the perimeter of an enterprise, but mobile computing, sophisticated malware, and the popularity of social networks are making it increasingly difficult to keep that perimeter secure. Once inside the perimeter, the only thing that stands between an attacker and the data that he or she is trying to steal is typically a static password. Securing cloud-based applications is as important as securing internal systems. And enterprises therefore need to look beyond just perimeter defenses based on one-time password tokens. Active Identity provides versatile authentication solutions based on smart cards and strong one-time password tokens. In order to better understand how we got to where we are, let's take a brief look at the history of enterprise security. In the beginning, enterprises deployed desktops, file servers, database servers, and mainframes on standalone networks. But with the advent of email and the requirement to publish websites in the public internet, enterprises were required to open up those networks to public networks, i.e. the World Wide Web or Internet. And so in order to protect the enterprise network at this point, enterprises build a perimeter comprised of firewalls and intrusion detection systems, the purpose of which is to keep bad guys out of corporate networks. Then along comes remote access. This requires that external users, typically employees in hotels and airports around the world, are given access to internal network resources. And so in order to provide some level of protection here, we see strong authentication coming into play for the first time, typically in the form of one-time password tokens. So this environment stands well for a while, but then a number of things happen that begin to challenge that perimeter. Firstly, sophisticated malware kits start to become available on the internet. Attackers can download these kits and craft a piece of malware or virus that's tuned to the specifics of an enterprise's network defense. Secondly, users demand access to internal resources from personal mobile devices. These are devices that the IT department typically has no control over, and yet are needing to be connected to internal networks. Thirdly, users begin to share far too much information on social network sites, revealing to attackers implementing social engineering techniques details about infrastructure, suppliers, etc. And lastly, enterprises increasingly take advantage of cloud-based computing to place key data and resources on networks external to their own perimeter, making their own perimeter irrelevant in the defense and protection of that data. These weaknesses are exploited by a new form of attack, often referred to as the advanced persistent threat. And a good insight into the way this attack works can be gained by taking a little bit of a look at the RSA breach that happened in February 2011. The first step in the attack was to seek publicly available information about specific employees. Social media sites are always a favorite. Then, 2 emails were sent to 2 small groups of employees. The email subject read 2011 recruitment plan, but the spreadsheet contained a 0-day exploit that installed a backdoor through an Adobe Flash vulnerability. In other words, a malware formed specifically for that environment attached to an email from what appeared to be a trusted source. The next step was to establish a beachhead, to install some sort of remote administration tool on the compromised machine that allowed the attacker to control that machine. The attacker now started digitally shoulder surfing, in other words, viewing every keystroke that user made. The next phase was to move laterally inside the network. The initial entry points are typically not strategic enough for attackers. They need users with more access, more admin rights to relevant services, servers, and etc. So the attacker exploits weak passwords, harvesting access credentials from the compromised users, user, domain, admin, service account passwords, and they perform privilege escalation. In other words, they spread out across the enterprise, compromising machine after machine until they find the machines with the data on that they wish to steal. It's the bypassing of the perimeter defense systems, followed by this insidious compromise of individual servers and desktops across the enterprise, that makes the advanced persistent threat so effective. In fact, to quote one of our competitors, the point about APTs being, first and foremost, a new attack doctrine built to circumvent existing perimeter and endpoint defenses. Once the attacker has located database servers and file servers with the key information they are trying to get access to, it becomes a relatively simple case to download that information and steal it. Whether it's email addresses, as in the case with the recent Epsilon attack, seed token data, as is the concern with the RSA breach, or more generally, corporate IP. And if you believe that this is a one-off attack, then it's instructive to read some of the blogs that have been written by people who know this stuff. Thanks for sharing some further information about the situation at hand. To be absolutely honest, I don't find this attack to be particularly sophisticated. It's pretty much standard stuff that I see on a day-to-day basis. So what can enterprises do to defend against the advanced persistent threat? Well, clearly, it's not the case that they should give up on perimeter defenses. Perimeter defenses remain a key part of the overall defense. However, enterprises need to layer authentication inside the enterprise as well as at the perimeter, securing access to individual desktops, file servers, database servers, web servers, and email servers through strong authentication, something better than just a static password. When we look at how that can be done, recognize that most corporate data is held on Windows servers, most corporate users have Windows laptops, and Windows only supports two authentication methods: static passwords and smart cards. When you consider the weaknesses of static passwords, it rapidly becomes apparent that smart cards become the only viable option for internal strong authentication throughout the enterprise. Let's look at the benefit of removing passwords from the security environment. Firstly, the attacker is unable to sniff passwords that are being entered to gain access to systems across the network. Secondly, users will tend to use the same password for multiple systems. Removing passwords removes the risk that an attacker who's gained access to one password is able to use that password to log on to all of the other systems that that user also uses. And lastly, password files often act as a single point of failure, providing an opportunity for attackers to download a password file and brute force it offline. Removing passwords from the equation removes this single point of failure. It's instructive to line up smart cards as an authentication mechanism against one-time password tokens from any vendor. With one-time password tokens, keys are typically managed in seed files, which need to be loaded into the authentication server. Whereas on a smart card, those private keys reside only on the card chip, and so smart cards are more secure. Secondly, smart cards are more useful. One-time password tokens are limited in their use, typically to remote access, perimeter defenses, and a limited number of applications. Whereas smart cards can be used for remote access, workstation, laptop and server login, data signing and encryption, physical access, and as a photo badge. Thirdly, smart cards are typically more convenient. A user may carry one or many smart cards in their wallet, and the login use case requires only the entry of a PIN and not the rekeying of a one-time password. By comparison, OTP tokens need to be carried often on a keychain, and it becomes very convenient when a user is asked to carry multiple one-time password tokens. And lastly, from an environmental sustainability perspective, smart cards have minimal electronics and no battery, whereas OTP tokens are often limited by battery life or a 3-year limit. And yet, when we look at the deployment of strong authentication in enterprises, most enterprises are relying predominantly on one-time password tokens, and smart cards have yet to achieve wide-scale deployment. And while many other authentication mechanisms have come into play, from PC tokens, mobile tokens, out-of-band SMS, device ID, none offer the full benefits of smart cards. In order to understand why we're at this position and how it's changing, it's instructive to line up OTP tokens against smart cards. Traditionally, we've considered that securing the perimeter is sufficient, that OTP tokens are highly secure, and that smart cards are costly and complex to deploy. However, this is changing. It's clear when we consider the advanced persistent threat that the securing the perimeter is no longer sufficient. The RSA breach has raised questions as to whether OTP tokens really are secure enough for key data resources. And smart cards are no longer expensive and difficult to deploy. And the reason for this? The Active Identity CMS appliance solution. Active Identity has released to market a first, a card management system in a box, for the first time enabling smart cards to be deployed throughout the enterprise in a cost-effective and easy way. The solution is out of the box. It contains an embedded certificate authority, HSM, and database. It can be deployed in 5 basic steps. It's cost-effective, comparable in cost to an OTP token solution. It's highly secure. The customer manages the keys on the smart card and is not dependent on vendor seed files. And is future-proof, providing a basis that's extensible for encryption, data signing, and securing the cloud. We've removed the barriers to deploying smart cards. Traditionally, smart card solutions were hard to deploy. They involved many moving complex parts, certificate authorities, card management systems, HSMs, all of which needed to be installed and configured. The CMS appliance combines all of these components into a single unit with a simple 5-step process for deployment. Traditionally, smart card deployments were complex and expensive to administer, requiring an enterprise to maintain expertise in multiple different areas and generating help desk calls around PIN management. With the CMS appliance, that complexity is hidden from the administrator, and the tasks reduced to basic operations: issue card, revoke card. In addition, a self-help desk is available, allowing end users to manage their own PINs. Traditionally, enterprises needed to source solutions from multiple different vendors. No one company was able to provide the cards, the readers, the certificate authority, the card management system, and the middleware. Active Identity, part of HID Global, provides a complete solution for enterprise smart card deployments. Enterprises are sometimes concerned about the readers. How are users going to use their smart cards? Here, there are a variety of options. Many laptops from major manufacturers are now available with an embedded smart card reader option. PCM-CIA readers can be inserted into the PCM-CIA slot on a laptop. USB-connected readers are available, an external reader connected through the USB port. And lastly, customers can deploy with a smart USB key instead of a smart card, a USB key with a smart card chip built in that plugs directly into the USB port on the computer. Smart cards can be deployed in 5 easy steps with the CMS appliance. Step 1. Plug in the ActiveID CMS appliance. The appliance is a rack-mounted 1U appliance. Connect it to the network, plug in the power supply, and the machine will self-boot. Step 2. Run the configuration wizard on the appliance. A wizard takes the administrator through the setup process. No knowledge of PKI or certificate authorities is required. Step 3. Run a simple script on each domain controller. This establishes the trust in the cards that are going to be issued by the CMS appliance. Step 4. Issue smart cards to the administrators. Administrators will log into the CMS management console to issue and administer end-user cards. The CMS appliance is now configured. Step 5. Issue smart cards to end users. End users can now log on to desktops and servers with the strongest form of authentication available. To better understand this process, you can check out our YouTube video at the link shown below. And here's what you won't need to do anymore. You'll no longer need to install, configure, or connect to a certificate authority because it's in the box. You'll no longer need to deploy an HSM because that strong cryptography module is built into the CMS appliance. You'll no longer need to configure a card profile because the unit comes pre-configured with card profiles defined for the enterprise. You'll no longer need to rely on a DBA to set up a database because the appliance comes with a built-in database. You'll no longer need to perform or even understand what a key ceremony is, and you won't need to enroll in evening classes in cryptography to manage your smart card user population, relying on simple, easy-to-use workflows pre-configured on the CMS appliance. One of the other benefits of smart cards is it lets you leverage your investment in cards for physical access to extend that to use for logical access. The evolution of physical access has evolved from I recognize your face, so I let you in through the door. I'm going to give you a key, to where we are in the majority of cases in the corporate world, where users are issued a card which gets them into the building, and looking to the future, being able to use the same capabilities through a mobile device. Logical access has evolved along similar lines, starting from passwords to one-time password tokens and increasingly to smart cards. And as that evolves, so that point of convergence occurs. And active identity and HID are uniquely positioned in terms of relationships, products, and expertise to make convergence access a reality. One card logs you onto your computer, gets you into the building. There are a range of benefits of converged physical logical access. One card gets you into the building, logs you onto your computer, gives you access to the applications you need to do a day's work, as well as providing a mechanism for remote users to authenticate onto VPNs. No more passwords, no more tokens, one card does it all. Secondly, from a financial perspective, you're able to leverage that investment in physical access cards for system security or vice versa, and replace two sets of administration processes with one. The cost of a converged smart card is considerably less than the combined cost of a physical access card and a one-time password token. And lastly, making the CSO happy. Buildings access and systems access privileges are collectively withdrawn when a user leaves, and credentials are no longer easily shared, enabling better compliance and increased accountability. Let's take a look at the solutions that HID Global and Active Identity offer for convergence. Firstly, Navigo enables the existing deployment base of 300 million active HID PAX cards, iClass and Prox cards, to be used for systems access. Windows login and Citrix login. Moving into the PKI world, the Crescendo cards provide a card with both a Prox or iClass contactless chip for physical access and a contact smart card chip to manage and contain certificates for logical access. Those cards can be managed by the CMS appliance, which issues and manages certificates and keys on those smart cards. Also available are dual interface cards with a smart card chip which also includes a contactless interface, enabling very highly security conscious organizations to deploy PKI at the door. This is done with the Active Entry product. Lastly, I'd like to talk about securing the cloud. 20 years ago, the enterprise figured out that we needed to deploy strong authentication for VPN access. But with the advent of cloud-based computing, it's often deemed acceptable to have HR, financial, customer data, which we would never have made available on the public internet, protected only by a static password when it was managed on enterprise systems, to now be available on the public internet in a cloud-based application. And it doesn't take a security expert to realize maybe we shouldn't be doing this. And so, Active Identity provides the Fortress appliance, the first appliance oriented at providing versatile authentication to secure the cloud. Supporting a wide range of use cases, the Fortress appliance is able to leverage protocols such as SAML2 to act as an identity provider, asserting users' identity where that identity has been validated with strong authentication to relying cloud-based applications, be they CRM systems, ERP systems, HR, time and expenses, or budgeting. This appliance also supports a wide range of one-time password tokens. And there are benefits that come from using Active Identity one-time password tokens. These tokens are the most secure on the market. Customers can initialize their own tokens rather than relying on keys that are loaded by the vendor. In other words, the only place that those token keys are going to exist is within the enterprise. And the enterprise is not dependent on the security processes put in place by the vendor to protect a central record of those keys. Secondly, the algorithm for the token is based on 3 variables, and the keys change with each use. So even if the seed file is compromised, the key that the attacker gains through that compromise does not enable the attacker to breach the security of the device. Active Identity provides mobile tokens, PC tokens, and web tokens, removing the need to issue physical devices to users. And these devices can be deployed in a mixed environment, combined also with out-of-band authentication. For example, one-time passwords sent by SMS, all of which are supported by the Fortress appliance. In fact, Active Identity is recognized as providing a broad range of supported authentication methods and a broad portfolio, that is, products that we offer directly, recognized by Gartner in its broad authentication survey. Active Identity provides identity assurance for the enterprise. That is, the issuance and management of a broad range of risk-appropriate credentials, and the ability to enable enterprises to use those credentials to protect access to desktops, networks, applications, and buildings. We provide a simple, in-the-box smart card management system, CMS appliance, a versatile authentication appliance that can protect both the perimeter and the cloud, the Fortress appliance, and a full range of authentication devices. For more information on our solutions, please go to our website. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation.